Should you apply to an executive MBA program or a regular MBA program? And if you decide on the executive MBA, what you need to do to get in? And which EMBA should you apply to? These are the questions that we're going to address with today's guests, Accepted's EMBA experts, Cindy Tokumitsu and Jen Weld.
Welcome to Admission Straight Talk, the podcast dedicated to graduate admissions and helping you approach the application process thoughtfully and successfully. Your host is Accepted's founder and world-renowned admissions guru, Linda Abraham. At Accepted, our mission is to get you to that unforgettable moment when you read your acceptance email and shout, "Yes, I'm in!" Confident you'll be attending the perfect program to help you launch the career of your dreams.
Welcome to the 348th episode of Admission Straight Talk. Thanks for joining me today. Before I dive into today's interview, I want to invite you to download ACE the EMBA, Expert Advice for the Rising Executive. This free guide will complement today's podcast and give you suggestions on how to choose the right executive MBA program for you, differentiate yourself from your competition in a very positive way, and present yourself effectively as a future business leader who will bring credit to any program that accepts you. Download ACE the EMBA at accepted.com/ACE-EMBA, ACE-EMBA. Our guests today, Cindy Tokumitsu and Jennifer Weld, are both Accepted consultants. Cindy joined Accepted in 1998, and since then she has carved out a niche for herself working with EMBA and older MBA applicants. She is the author of ACE the Executive MBA and Top Executive MBA Program Essay Questions, How to Answer Them Right. Both are free downloads that you can access from the show notes at accepted.com/348. Jen Weld, our other guest today, served for 4 years on the Cornell Executive MBA Admissions Committee and later joined Accepted in 2010. She has authored numerous blog posts on MBA and Executive MBA admissions, including the free guide, Perfect Answers to MBA Interview Questions, which is also linked to from our show notes at accepted.com/348. And they're all there for your downloading and enlightening pleasure. Cindy and Jen, welcome to Admission Straight Talk.
Hi, Linda and Jen.
Okay, great. Now, let's start something just very basic. Let's say I'm in my early 30s, which I'm definitely not, and I'm in middle management and have C-suite ambitions. I have a fairly strong technical background. Should I apply for an MBA or an executive MBA, and why? And Cindy, your initial comes first in the alphabet. Why don't you start first, and then we'll ask Jen.
Sure. So right away, I would start by saying that, you mentioned early 30s to mid 30s. And I actually, for the MBA programs, there's kind of a big difference between them. I think the early 30s are still at the upper end of the average age range for many regular MBA, full-time MBA programs, whereas the mid 30s you're definitely an older applicant category for regular MBA, and you're on the younger end for EMBA. So you have to look at what you want to get out of it, but also look at each program and what they're looking for in terms of applicants and age ranges. Some executive programs want a certain amount of not just experience, but managerial experience. And others are quite open to younger, early 30s level or mid 30s applicants. So I think very carefully for yourself what you want, but also look at the specific programs very closely in their criteria.
Okay. Jen, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And one thing I would add is that I think it also can depend on whether or not you're interested in changing industries or changing job functions in order to get to the C-suite eventually, because a full-time MBA makes a lot of sense if you're a career switcher. But if you're continuing on with your organization, I think it can behoove you more to stick with the executive MBA path.
Right, and then you continue to advance in your career, and you do the EMBA on the side. Jen, why don't you start with the next one? You were on the admissions committee. What makes for a good executive MBA candidate?
Well, I think what's important, as Cindy already alluded to, is obviously having some managerial experience, seeing that progression on your resume. I think one of the key differences between an MBA applicant and an executive MBA applicant is that when an MBA applicant, the admissions committee is looking more at kind of career potential. Whereas with executive MBA, you're kind of already seeing some evidence that the potential's already there, that the moving up the rungs of the ladder, they're already happening within an organization. So I think that that's really important. I think it's also really important that a personality, someone who feels comfortable, really being an active participant in a program, and that's something that you analyze, obviously with how frequently these folks are in touch with the admissions office, if they come to information sessions, if they're coming to weekend class sessions and participating, because you don't want a wallflower to be in the program. You really want a person who's going to be helping push the discussion forward, and really add, just as much learning potential to their fellow students as the faculty who teach in the program.
All right. Cindy, what do you think makes for a good executive MBA candidate? You've been doing this for about 20 years.
I totally agree, of course, but also, to really build on that, Jen's last point, something that I really try to draw out with clients is, by being a good contributor or participant, you really want to show yourself in your application to be a person who has something to say about your function, your industry, not just that not just looking at your past experience, but also that you're reflective and thoughtful and have a point of view and aren't afraid to express it, that, you're engaged with that future and that's of the industry or of your function or whatever it is, that you're really going to bring that engagement to the table and to the process.
Great. Now, Cindy, how are the criteria for executive MBA and full-time MBA programs different?
I think, I would say that the key criteria are basically the same, but they're weighted differently. So I think, in my experience, that the test score and the GPA are weigh a little bit less, and the career experience weighs more. In that, those are the three real pillars, I guess. And
the career experience weighs more with the executive MBA, right?
With the executive MBA, yes, and not just length of it or title, but really what you've accomplished, what your track record is, and showing that you've dealt with some significant stakes here and there and such. So I say the balance is different, and
Okay, Jen, what would you like to add to that?
Well, I would say that short and long-term goals tend to be different for the different applicants as well. So for full-time applicants, there's the understanding that there is kind of a ladder that has to be progressed through. So maybe if you're going to investment banking, you're understanding you're going to start as an associate, and then you're going to be a senior associate, and then you're going to be a vice president, and then maybe eventually you make it to C-suite. Whereas with an executive MBA applicant, they've already gone up several rungs of that ladder, and they're probably already on the precipice of moving into general management, which is what a vast majority of the clients that I work with have a lot of depth in a particular subject matter and are just looking for that breadth in order to be able to move into the C-suite and have all the skills in their toolkit in order to run a business, essentially.
All right, great. Thank you for that. And Jen, I'm going to start with you now with the next question. What makes for a great executive MBA application? What really leapt off the page when you were reviewing applications?
Great essays. So, as a sitting in an admissions chair, you look at hundreds of applications in a season, and over the course of your admissions lifetime, you'll probably look at thousands, if not tens of thousands, and you can tell within the first few sentences, whether or not this is going to be the one that you're really interested in talking to, and this is the one that you're gonna, yawn your way through. Because when I talk to my clients, I imagine, imagine that the admissions committee is looking through, they're sort of chugging through page after page, and what's the one that's going to make them leap out of their chair and be like, oh, I can't wait to meet this person. So that's the way you should be looking. You should be thinking about how you go about addressing your application, your essay materials in particular. Don't focus on that boring, well, I say that. They're all
Sorry.
business. I'm sure all business examples are very relevant, but there are some that stand out more, from an impact perspective and from an audience perspective. Be thinking about someone who doesn't necessarily have the technical skill set that you have in your IT profession. How can you bring your achievement to life in a way that someone who's not technical can really understand what you've done and be interested and excited to learn more about it.
That's a great answer. Thank you. Cindy, what would you add to that?
I just, agree 1,000%, Eva. I could just that sense of engagement with the essay, that word is one that I use a lot for a reason, where you just remember that the essays are really precious real estate, and just go for it. Make sure that your personality comes through and your ideas and thoughts come through. It's not the place to summarize your career. It's not the place to show that you're qualified. There are other areas of the application that to do that. A lot of people, I find, do tend to try to prove again that they're qualified in the essays, and that's just such a waste of that valuable real estate. So be strategic about it, but also let your voice and sort of instinct comes through as well, and communicate.
I was reviewing an essay recently, and the applicant had put something really fascinating in the essay, but it was like 2/3 of the way in. And I said, what are you doing? Put it at the top. grab attention, There was a lot of very good other material in the essays, and the guy got in also, but right. All right. Now, we've talked about full-time MBA versus the executive MBA. And of course, one of the big differences between full-time and executive is that the executive is part-time. How does the executive MBA's part-time structure affect the admissions process? And how should the applicant kind of adjust their application as a result? Cindy?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a really great question, because it's also a wonderful opportunity in a way if you're doing work that's interesting, and that it's really important to remember that what you're doing day to day in your job is what you're going to be bringing to your MBA classroom every day, or to your team, or to your study group. So that's something that you want to look for opportunities to show a little bit in the application, whether it's usually through the essays, I would say, just give them a glimpse of what you're doing and some of the issues that you're dealing with, and some of the challenges you have. Let them really give them a little lens into your day-to-day role. I think that's one important thing. And the other thing is just to make sure that the fact that it's part-time, it means a huge commitment. So somewhere, just be prepared to demonstrate or express that you are able to handle that additional work and responsibility on top of your day-to-day work.
Okay, great. Jen?
Because I care about that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are some programs that expressly ask sort of, how are you going to manage through this? Yeah. In the application process, but most will. I mean, I always asked in the Cornell interview. My question was, when you think about doing this program, what gives you heartburn? And I always got a good answer. And it was, kind of, well.
Did you have a bottle of Tums on your desk at the time?
And it was kind of, but it was just to make sure. I mean, if someone said, "Oh, yeah, nothing, I'm ready." That really gave me pause, because no, this person really doesn't know what they're in for. This is going to be an extra 20 hours a week, at least, on top of, already a busy life, and, work life, home life, extracurricular life. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It can be. But one thing that I do tell people, my clients, is on the other end, I have so many students that graduated from Cornell that I became good friends with, and afterwards they said, I have so much free time on my hands now. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm going to have to take up like 3 new hobbies. So, so while there's going to be a lot of pain in the process, your time management skills are going to get top notch, and you're going to reap the intangible benefits when you graduate.
I'm always frankly amazed that people can do it. Even though I've worked with the MBA applicants for all these years, I'm still like in awe that people can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were people. There was a woman who joined the program at Cornell she had 3 kids under 5. And she had a very demanding job at IBM, and I just thought, I don't know how she did it.
I interviewed, it might be 2 years ago now for the podcast, a woman who was a physician, had 3 children, 2 of them fairly young twins, and did an EMBA. I don't think it was Cornell's EMBA, but pretty sure it wasn't. But I'll link to that show from our show notes at accept.com/348. It was a fascinating interview. She just had. Okay, so the question I have for you now, I can reminisce about that interview, but anybody who wants to can go listen to it. Should an applicant, obviously, if the question is asked, you need to address it. And how would you recommend they address it? I mean, should they talk about the time management skills that they already have? Should they provide examples? And if they're not asked in the application about time management, should they kind of try and sneak it into an essay, or should they wait to be asked in an interview? What would you say to that? And Jen, you can start now.
I mean, I wouldn't say that if it's not asked that you have to weave it into the application itself. I would just say be prepared to answer it in an interview situation. So just be thinking about, have you had a discussion with your manager yet about how you could potentially offload some of that work? Have you had a discussion with your family about, certain commitments that you're going to have to put by the wayside for, the next 18 months or 2 years? Or are you already pulling back from some volunteer work that you're doing, specifically to address, the oncoming challenge of the program? So to just be thoughtful and be thinking about that up front and definitely have an answer.
Cindy, what would you say?
Yeah, no, I would just say if it's not one of the applications that has that question, when I do interview prep, I always include that in the interview prep, and I counsel people to be specific. You don't have, it can be short and sweet, but give a few specific things that you're going to change or are changing. Don't just say that you recognize that it's a big, challenge, but talk about concrete things, a couple of things you're literally going to change in your actual life. I think that's the best way to handle it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you both. Those are very good answers. Now, the MBA applicants sometimes struggle to fit in all that they want to tell admissions committees into the essays. Executive MBA applicants have so many more years of experience. This challenge, I think, is even greater for them. How do you advise EMBA applicants to distill their experience into succinct stories and sound bites, both for the essays and the interview? And Cindy, why don't you start with this one?
Sure. One of the, I think taking a core approach of maybe counterintuitive, but not stepping back from that, how am I going to fit it all in? And instead ask yourself, what are the 2 or 3 absolutely essential things that I really have to communicate that are to make my application be really strong, but really focused, to have a message, and then be disciplined and focus on those. Be willing to go in a little depth in those areas and be willing. I mean, it's not easy. It's, you're emotionally attached to things, but you have to let stuff go in many cases in life, and this is one of them. And also just, easy to say, don't, again, I've said earlier, but don't feel like you need to review or summarize your whole career in the essay questions that ask about goals. I mean, there are some of those kinds of things to just avoid, because you really do want to go in depth in certain anecdotes and make it come alive through that.
Thanks. Jen?
Yeah, and for me, because the way that I went through applications is I would always start with the resume. So I work with my clients just to make sure that they have the most impactful, useful resume possible. So, if someone comes to me with a very technical background, oftentimes I'll have them strip all that stuff out. Let's really focus on, this needs to be an accomplishment-based resume, because this is the ideal location for you to, to really show them, wow, this guy's impressive, and I really want to learn more from the rest of the application. And then the rest of the application can help build that 360-degree view, as opposed to having to rely on the essays to do that for you. So I think that a strong resume, again, that's really succinct and accomplishment based is really important as well.
Okay, great. Both great answers. Thank you both. What do you feel is the biggest challenge your executive MBA clients face, and how do you help them overcome it? Jen, why don't you start this time?
Well, I think a lot of them, it's just, can I really do this? I
Can
think
you do this in terms of the application or the executive MBA program?
Well, because there never seems to be the right time,
Okay.
so it's I just got a recent promotion and maybe I should put it, I mean, because I've worked with a lot of clients who are, we start the process and then they're, is this the right time or not? So I think that just kind of it's just like the same situation with starting a family. There probably never will be the perfect time. And the nice thing about executive MBA application cycles, not for all programs, but a lot of them are very flexible, and in fact, accept applications up to very late in the cycle, and so you can think about it and still be applying maybe, even a month or two before the program starts, because maybe you're still trying to put all those ducks in a row. So I think that there's a lot of trepidation about, is this really going to be the right moment for me? I think I face that a lot with clients. That's one thing anyway I can think of offhand.
I'm going to guess that you don't advise them to wait till the last minute, though.
Well, it depends, every once in a while, if it's somebody who just, got a promotion, he's going to be moving to Germany,
Yeah.
Then that's one thing. But if
Right.
it's, my wife just got pregnant, and am I going to have time to participate and be a full-time dad? There's a lot of things to weigh. And what I also say, I'm not encouraging this by any stretch, but programs understand that life happens, and so admissions offices are pretty good about, if circumstances do change, many programs do offer a deferral for a certain period of time, so that's something that could certainly be considered if need be.
Cindy, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I guess what I find is to be a major challenge for the executive. One thing that just does come to mind is that they're so in it, working on an application. They're so involved in their day-to-day work, and the application relates to that day-to-day work. It's not like a regular MBA where it's all future focused. It's really hard to just kind of step out and see it holistically and see it strategically. Getting a little distance, I think, it'll be how to do that. I can't say I wish I had like a magic formula for that, but do try to take a strategic look at it, step back a little bit, and sort of develop a message or a focus for the application, so you're not just talking about stuff and the next level and the kind of things that just aren't really going to help you. So it's really hard to do when you're in the middle of all of it at once, but I think it's really worth it, and it doesn't have to take long. Certainly we're here to help you to do that as well. But other people can help you as well. But definitely try to do that, I think. And Jen, I really like the fact that executive MBA AdComs are so helpful to applicants. It's such a difference from the regular MBA AdComs, for better for worse. But they really, they have so many opportunities to engage, and they're so willing to take a call, answer a question, occasionally even give someone an extension. So yeah.
Let's move on to the interview part of the executive MBA application process. Cindy, any tips for the executive MBA interviewee?
Practice. It's these people, executive MBA applicants are very sophisticated and have great communication skills, but it's often been a long time since they've been in that particular seat. And it can be a bit unnerving. Sometimes the most polished and impressive people are the ones that I find really struggle through a mock interview. And it's just strange, after not having been in that role for a long time. So I would say practice, and the advice that we use for the essays, I would say also applies to the interview in terms of being specific, giving anecdotes, that kind of thing.
Jen, what do you want to add? You
Well,
wrote an
one
ebook
thing I
on
say
interviews.
is that, I mean, there aren't going to be any gotcha questions. Oftentimes it's very much conducted on a peer-to-peer level because admissions committees have a lot of respect for the experience that these folks have already. And it really is kind of more of a fit kind of thing as opposed to a behavioral kind of interview, usually, just kind of gauging whether or not, what they've seen from the application itself, is what you see, in person. So I can't tell you how many times I saw someone on paper that I thought, oh, wow, I can't wait to meet this person. And then, whew, not admitted. And then someone else who I thought, gosh, she is really young and, I'm just not sure if this is the right time or whatever. And then, knocks my socks off. So I think that this is really the opportunity to really bring your application to life. But again, to just not worry about it too much. I mean, I've never heard about an executive MBA interview, and Cindy, you can correct me if you've heard it, but someone just asks you a completely outlandish question like, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? I mean, there's just no point in doing that. I mean, it's really like verifying, like, you seem like you're a pretty impressive person, and let's learn a little bit more about you and what specifically you're going to bring to the table, because they really are looking for people, again, as I said earlier, that are really going to bring a very rich, meaningful set of experiences to the classroom.
Okay. Any last words of advice for executive MBA applicants? Jen, why don't you start this one?
I would say, if at all possible, visit the programs. There is just no substitute for getting to sit in on those classes, meet the students, and just see if it feels like a good fit. It just that really does it. And barring that, because that could be really difficult time-wise, or in terms of distance, but at least talking to alums or current students, because you just want to get a flavor of the program, because it's so much time and so much money, and you don't want to be a couple weeks in and just think, oh, this was just the worst decision I made. And so coming to see the program in action is really, really important if you can do that.
Cindy?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would also say that most EMBA applications have a goals essay, and it's sometimes a little longer than what the regular MBA applications have. So the fact that it's important enough to warrant that space, I would just say try to include in that essay, it's so important that try to include both the practical information of what kinds of positions you're going to be and what kind of roles you expect to be and or to do, and et cetera, but also some vision in there. I find that for really what you want to achieve, that inspires you or motivates you. I find that people tend to be very strong in one or the other, and they'll be very specific, but I'll be so tell me, like, why? Why do you really want to do that? Like, why is it great that you're going to do that? Because I don't get it yet. Or I'll say, on the other hand, people will be very vague and interesting, but it'll be like, I want to, make this great impact. I had a client recently said something along the lines of, I want to make sure that physicians have a role in shaping the healthcare of the future. And I was just like, that's really amazing, but how? What organization are you going to do that from? And what kind of? So I think a little bit of both in those goals essays is going to be important. That's
balance. Okay. And what would you have liked me to ask you, Cindy? Why don't you start with this one about executive MBA admissions?
I think you really covered pretty much the key points. People have a lot of questions about, not having enough extracurricular activities and this and that. But I would say, just, don't, go with your strengths. And so don't, I would say, I don't really have an extra question. There's something that I think that I would have needed you to ask. So go ahead to Jen.
All right, Jen. What would you like me to ask you?
So what I wish you would have asked, or a point I'd like to make is that, there's a lot of pressure, or there's a lot of assumption that, that the rankings really matter. And I go back to the earlier challenge of visit the program, because what I always said to applicants was, any of the top 25 programs, you're going to get an excellent education. Beyond that, it's really about fit. And, so many of these programs have so many different kinds of formats. Once is 3 Saturdays a month, or every other Friday and Saturday, or every other Saturday and Sunday, or, 1 month or 1 week a month, or, they only get together for 3 weeks every 4 months. I mean, so there's so many different kinds of formats. And so it's really about that, finding that proper fit. And I think worrying less about that ranking thing.
Okay. So you're not a big fan of rankings. Now, I think the value of rankings is that they provide a lot of data.
Yes.
The rankings themselves are not nearly as valuable as they're hyped up to be.
Because I think you're gonna get a great education at any of those programs for sure, and you'll probably get a great network with any of those programs. But are they people that you're gonna enjoy being with for the 2 years that you're there, and being your network for the rest of your life? If not, maybe look at a different program.
And are they going to help you achieve your goals?
Mm-hmm.
Not the rankings goals, but your goals.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, no, I certainly agree with that. Cindy and Jen, I want to thank you both for joining me today. I'm not going to ask you where listeners can learn more about our guests. I'm going to just tell them where they can learn more about you. Listeners, you can find links to Cindy's and Jen's bios at accept.com/348. And if you'd like to work with either Cindy or Jen on your applications to Executive MBA or MBA programs, because they both do both, you can request them either in the order form or from their bio pages. We'll include links to their bios, the resources they have authored, and other relevant information in the show notes at accept.com/348. And a final reminder, download your free copy of ACE Executive MBA, Expert Advice for the Rising Executive from accepted.com/ACE EMBA. Listener, thank you too for joining Jen, Cindy, and me for our 348th episode. If you find the show worthwhile, please subscribe. Make sure you don't miss any future shows, be they with admissions directors, admissions consultants, professors, current students, test prep pros, or alumni doing great things. Thanks again for coming. This is Admissions Straight Talk produced by Accepted, and I'm your host, Linda Abraham. I'll talk to you again next week.